Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast, where we interview experts in driver recruiting. We provide industry insights, marketing trends, and motivation to help you level up your recruiting game. Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Craddock, and I'm super excited. We have Keith Stelzer on today. And so he is the Vice President of Safety and Recruiting at Paper Transport. He's been in the industry around 9 years. And yeah, so welcome, Keith. I'm excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Aaron. Glad to be here.
And then we're actually talking about a topic that I love, which is just building culture and specifically growth the right way in growing your fleet. And so that's some of what we're going to be going back and forth on today is just like, what does it look like to grow the right way? And then I know everyone has different opinions on, but it's just a really good case study as Keith has been doing this for 9 years at Paper Transport, and they are growing the right way.
Right.
And so, we'll start out really broad. Like, what is growth the right way? Like, what does that mean to you, Keith?
Right. Probably a funny topic right now, right after what we're coming out of in our industry. But, to me, it's a great time to think about this, right? Because we're all looking to take advantage of what we hope to be a return to normal for our world of transportation. So, I just believe that when you're thinking about growing the right way, number one, it needs to be in alignment with whatever your mission and vision is as an organization, right? And that's first and foremost. So you can't sacrifice those things, right? Those things that are supposed to be why you're in business, right? To grow and ignore those things. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing would be, it needs to be a way that you can help support your culture, and here at Paper Transport, growth has just been an inherent part of our culture. It's an inherent part of our mission to build a great place to work, where we continue to grow, obviously our driver base, our revenue base, but then obviously it's also a great way for us to grow opportunity for our employees. So I think, having that in mind, is what drives us here. And that's just something that I think, you have to know why you want to grow, and then it has to really be in alignment with what you do and focus on as a business.
And so do you guys see growth this next year? Like are you planning for it? Because you did mention, we're coming off a rough, couple 2 years. I don't think anybody's surprised by that.
No, I think, we darn well better grow. That's my opinion. It's time again. It's been a rough couple of years for our industry, and, we're primed for it. I think we've made some really smart, effective decisions, changes, and I'm excited about what this next year may bring. Now, will our market just rebound and get hot, right off the bat here? No, probably not. So you need to be smart and think about the financial impact of your growth. But inevitably, I definitely expect us to grow in 2025.
Yeah, it's so funny, because I'm like the ever optimist in terms of, I just think everything's going to grow. It's going to be awesome. And so it's almost like I've been beat down the last 24, 36 months. I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Just a really, literally, historically the longest time of a freight recession. And we grew a tiny bit, I think 10% last year, 6% the year before, as a company, but still it felt like we were losing. And, the feeling is just trudging and struggle, and it does not at all like when you look at the numbers on the spreadsheet and you're like, we grew a tiny bit in top line, but that, that's not the way it feels. And just the pain and I've been even surprised the last just couple weeks, right now we're chatting in early February. I know this will come out a little later, but just the number of layoffs still, just in the recruiting world, just, somebody I know almost every day. And and I think people are still the general consensus I get is optimistic towards some level of growth, but it's a cautious optimism. Even me, as the optimist, I'm I'm grow, but I don't, it's almost I can't even comprehend the windows that we had in the past, after COVID, where it just took off like a rocket.
Right.
And profitability for fleets was just through the roof.
Right.
It I can't even remember those days. And it doesn't seem possible that the competition for the driver pool could really heat up that much. but it can, like history does, like, I mean, it's a cycle, but it's just, I think it's just the duration of this cycle and just how much pain I've seen on peers.
Yeah. You're not alone, right? I mean, I think we've all experienced that in some shape or fashion, some worse than others, right? Unfortunately, but I think, when you think about your organization, right, it's just a matter of, what areas make the most sense to kind of focus on your growth into a, return, hopefully a rebound starting, right? But you're right. You have to be cautious and you have to be careful and right, make the right decisions. And I think that's what the downturn in the market, really forced good companies to do is think about, hey, what are we best at? What can I, be world class in? What can we really do is good or better than anybody else? And then that's where you need to strengthen and focus and then reprioritize and push forward, right? So that's what I'm excited about here is, we've done a lot of things through the years, but building a great partnership with our customers and great customer base on the dedicated side of the world is what really we're focused towards, which inevitably a lot of the world is focused towards, right? With all the ups and downs that have happened in the last couple of years, especially on the open market. But that's something that's been our bread and butter for a long time. And we're poised to really make good on that side of our business as we push forward.
That's good. I think everybody needs to write that down, like specifically, like this is a season to focus on what you're world class at, what you're best at,
right?
And then to go all in on that. Like I think this is going to be a season like the next 2 years that we see, like as the market rebounds at whatever pace, right? Or 3 years, whatever long it takes, we don't know. That's what you're going to see is you're going to see leaders emerge in different categories that have, whether it's dedicated or like whether it's like freight type or niche, like type of drivers they're hiring, like experience level. Like you're going to see certain carriers emerge and gain and pick up a lot of market share. And also the ones that take care of their employees and have a good culture, which I know culture is one of the things you guys focus a lot on.
Right.
Like those are the people that are going to win, because when the competition heats up and everybody's trying to poach your drivers and pull them away and give them more money and different things, like it's going to be culture and treating them well, right? Like just across the board. So paying them 100%. Well, treating them well. And so people are going to you're not really going to see that shake up until the competition heats up. And then that's where some driver counts are going to shift, where you might have a 400 truck fleet be able to grow to a 500 truck fleet as they need. And then you're going to see other 600 truck fleets go down to 300 trucks. I mean, it's going to be rough because we don't know some of those cultural aspects because people haven't been able to move as easily as in the past.
Yeah. And I think that's where, you hit the point, hit the nail right on the head with like pay and home time, right? There's always a better paying job, right? I mean, no matter what you do, right? There is a better paying job out there, right? There's always a job that has a little bit better schedule, right? But who are the people behind that? What are the relationships that are there for the long term? And I think that's huge, right? And people, we don't like to admit it, but people, I'm not going to say they don't leave companies, but more often they do leave managers. They do leave the people that they work for. And, I think that's something that we can never lose sight of, and when you're thinking about your culture and what you're going to do to prevent turnover, right? You have to be focused there. I also think as you're hiring people in too, you need to be putting them at the forefront, right? I mean, if we want to be best in class and, be great for our customers and do all the right things and try to always, do our best to make the best decisions and in the best interests of them and us, right? You also better be bringing in really good people too. So it's not the time to skimp on, who you hire, right? Or you cut corners on the quality of people that you want to build your organization with. And I think that's something that, if you want to be really good in a specific space or a niche space or a customer service space, you really need to make sure that's a part of your focus too, right? And again, leave managers and managers sometimes also, hire the wrong people, right? I mean, so it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, Keith, like one of the things that you mentioned, like in our pre-call, like both talking with Ginger, and meeting with me this morning was like specifically slowing down, which is something you usually don't hear. You usually hear speed to hire, right? We want to get these drivers in. We want to get these admin people in, HR people, like as quickly as possible. But you were telling me a little bit about the importance. So just for our audience, which is like directors of recruiting, C-suite recruiters, like what is your advice on maybe slowing down a little bit and some strategy around that?
Yeah, I think number one, 100% believe reaching out, touching base as quickly as possible is extremely important in our industry, especially when you're going after great professional drivers, right? You need to be one of the first few that they're talking to when they're looking to make a change, right? But it doesn't mean that process of bringing them on board and going through the process of introducing them to your company needs to be rapid fire, right? So I think that's where, again, I'm 100% in alignment that, hey, you need to be connecting as quickly as possible, but that process that you're working through with that individual, needs to make sure that it's a fit for both parties, right? And I think that's where sometimes our industry doesn't do itself justice, right? I mean, we move too fast. We don't ask enough questions. We don't make sure the fit is good, and that can cause, obviously the problems that so many of our industry counterparts have, right? Where turnover is, 70, 80, 90, 100%. So that's something that we really try to take our time and focus on the front end here, whether that's engaging, our professional drivers that are coming on board with their operations team before they're here, getting to understand, build a relationship and really make sure it's the right thing, or whether it's a front end, more scientific assessment to make sure it's kind of the right fit both ways.
So that was gonna be my next question, is like, what do you guys do? You said like some sort of like assessment that kind of slows it down, and it almost sounds like some type of interview process. So a couple different questions. Like, do you do an assessment, and then also who partners with them in that journey? Like, do they switch from the recruiter to several different roles, or is there like a cohesive approach to the whole onboarding process?
Yeah, through the years, we've broken it down a little bit and then brought it back together. We've done it a few different ways, but we believe, and we just, we've been kind of in the mindset that, hey, one relationship owner for that professional is the best way to do it. Certainly that individual needs to be a little bit of a jack of all trades as far as their expertise, but I'm just proud of the great recruiters we have here. That being said, the recruiter owns that relationship with our professionals all the way until they're here in orientation and training at Paper Transport. But through that process, there is that front end assessment that the candidate is working through. That's kind of right after the application process. And then once that happens, there's the relationship building with the recruiter, the interview with the recruiter, and then we're connecting them with their operations team and having them do a secondary conversation with their operations leader to make sure that, hey, they're both on the same page. There's clarity on the role, there's clarity on the function, there's good expectations exchange, right? And then from there it gets back into the recruiter's hands, and we kind of close that thing up and get things scheduled and get them to the location where they're going to onboard with us. So I think we had broken that apart in other years, right? Where compliance gets their hands on a little bit earlier. Certainly compliance is involved in the process, but the recruiter is never losing touch with the professional driver in our process.
And what does that improve? Because having switched, it sounds like switched to that, away from it, tried different things. Like, how did you arrive back at that? What was the metric you were measuring that kind of determined that is the best route for this season, right? And again, it might change again, but
I think hire rates have just been better in this manner. Unfortunately, I hate to say it a lot, but like no-show rates are much better, this way as well. Meaning
they're lower,
right? So I think those are the two key factors that we're looking at, and then inevitably we're always paying close attention to retention. I don't know that there's been a huge impact there, but obviously, with the recruiter owning that relationship more fully all the way through the process, there's a little bit more partnership there too, right? With the professional and the recruiter as a resource even after hire. So it's very common that our recruiter will get a phone call, a stop by, a message from a driver that's been hired in regards to some questions they might have or something they just want to touch base on. So I think that's huge. And one thing I will say as well is, we just get continuous feedback. I have lunch almost every week with our new drivers to paper transport. And, there's just such positive feedback about our driver recruiters. And I think our industry, again, sometimes just makes it hard to trust, right? And one thing I'll say is I think, we typically do a pretty darn good job of building up that trust and then delivering right on that, right? I mean, we're not selling a $75,000 job at $100,000, right? You just can't do that in today's world. And that's where just every time I'm having lunch, the feedback I get from our professionals coming in is, I heard from you right away. Answered all my questions, really helped me to understand, and make sure this was the right fit for me. And just so personable, so kind, so helpful, right? And that's just, I don't know, I kind of fills my cup up when I hear those things, right?
Yeah.
So just makes you feel good about what you're building. In addition, that's part of who we are here at Paper Transport, part of our culture of being a people-focused company.
I know that there's some directors recruiting and some VPs recruiting listening right now thinking like, my recruiters oversell things and the drivers don't like them. So like, how do you guys accomplish that? Like, how do you have a team of just recruiters that the drivers don't view as like your sleazy salesperson, but view as like a partner?
Yeah.
Like how are you accomplishing that? And then how are you all getting on the same page in terms of trust, communicating, here's exactly what the job looks like? I mean, I know none of us do it perfectly, but as best as we can.
Right. Yeah. You're always going to make mistakes and you're going to miss on this or be misaligned a little bit here or there. But I think, number one, not only are we making sure we're bringing in the right professional drivers for us, right, and for them, we're doing that on who we bring in here into the office as well, right? So, it's not maybe a simple process coming to work here at Paper Transport in the office. And part of that, again, is also, and I know I'm going to go back to this again, but we do a behavioral and kind of personality assessment on the front end too, for our office teams and making sure that, hey, their fit for us is good, but also this one is more specific, even that they're the right fit for the role that we're placing them into. So I think, that's something that I think has made a world of difference for us. We've been utilizing that for over 10 years now, and it's been a great tool for us and something that has just really helped us, I think, to put the right people in the right roles. Beyond that, I talked about the bridge to operations, kind of the bridge to the relationship that's going to be the key relationship for that driver manager to driver relationship. When a candidate is talking to their operations team, right, they're reaffirming some things, right? So there's a little bit of a double check kind of built in place and into our process as well. Not that there's not just a great deal of inherent trust in our recruiters, but that's a great way for us to make sure that, hey, my recruiter wasn't saying one thing and I'm talking to an operations person that's actually, managing the team of people doing this job right now, and they're misaligned, right? Those two things need to come to alignment through that process.
So being over recruiting and safety, so are you working with the different ops people and leaders there? Like who's doing the work of building that culture to where everybody is on the same page and like pulling in the same direction? Because that what you have is special, because not every fleet has that. Especially, I mean, you guys are pretty big as well.
Yeah.
And so who is doing that, like coaching and working together and alignment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could point to kind of one person, one department, one area that's doing that. I think it has to be across the organization. Culture is a hard thing to put your finger on, right? Everybody wants to talk about culture. It is a really hard thing to put your finger on. I think here we just do a few things to kind of make it purposeful, right? Like, we have things around the office. We start our week every week with an all office meeting, just for 5 minutes, right, to hit on that week's culture message and safety focus and focus for the week. And so I think it's just continue to do some of the small things, to make sure that you're all pulling in the same direction, right? That being said, I think transparency within our organization is a really key component of that. And then, just making sure to do your best to tear down silos, right? We all get siloed at times, right? But, really working hard to kind of fight against that. I wish I could tell you like, hey, we do this or we do that, but I think it's just a compilation of small things. And then, making sure that for us, we have 15 culture statements, that those are in alignment with our core values, and that's in alignment with our mission. I know that that's all simple business speak, but the reality is living it versus just having it on the wall or on paper is there's a big difference there. And you have to find the ways that work best for you and your organization to live it.
Yeah. That's so good. Like I was like taking notes feverishly on that. So like doing the small things well. And then I liked the 5-minute all office meeting, and that I just love that. I love that it's short like that. And then you said you touch on culture. So there's that weekly cohesion on that. And then safety, which is so important. And I know you guys are leading in some of the efforts on safety on some different boards and things like that.
Yeah.
And then just focus for the week.
Yeah.
I love that clarity.
Again, it's just so hard to point to. And I wish, Aaron, I could tell you, hey, this person has just been so instrumental. And I will say there's been some very instrumental people in our history here at Paper Transport, whether it was our original founders or previous president or CEO, right? I mean, everybody has to be on board. But I think inevitably, I think here, anywhere that has a good culture, a solid culture, right? You have the vast majority of your employee base, right? That's committed to it, right? It can't just be leadership, right? It can't just be, the front lines doing the hard work, right? It has to be everybody in the mix. And then you need to protect that, right? So those that won't get on board with it, right? And won't support it, right? Maybe that's just, this place isn't the right place for them, right? Maybe they need to find somewhere else that is the right place, that does align with what they, what their culture, values are, right? Those types of things.
Now let's take a minute to thank today's sponsor. Do you hire truck drivers in hard to fill areas, or do you need help creating efficiency in your recruiting department? You're not alone. With 50 plus years experience, Trucking Click specializes in data-driven strategies, industry-leading customer experience, and custom solutions that'll get you to your goal. Trucking Clicks is your go-to place for high-quality, direct leads at scale. Visit truckingclicks.com or call 512-982-0816 today. Yeah, so who is the right person to work at Paper Transport? Whether it's driver, office staff, anything, like who are the right people?
Yeah, I'm going to steal a statement I've heard from others, but we can be a place for anyone, but we're not a place for everyone, right? So I mean that's something that I think rings dear to me, and I think I can't put a perfect plug in place here for who it is. What I'll say is we look for some key things, especially on both the professional driver side and then the office side. We look at it a little bit differently and how that's going to work together. Our industry is fast paced, right? So, if you come into this industry, there might be a few areas that you can be in that you don't have to have kind of that mentality of being fast paced, right? But for the most part, if you're working in the world of transportation, you need to be able to kind of bounce around and bounce from item to item, right? And I think that's something we take a really close look at, and it's not maybe even just specific to us, but it's kind of a fit to the industry more than anything. And then I think on the professional driver side, it's really about you kind of your fit to doing the right thing, right? And that certainly is always the safe thing, but beyond that, it's about the balance of balancing, the demands of the job, which, our professional drivers, I think, have one of the hardest jobs in the world, right? And that's something that I think is really important, is how they look at things and how they approach things, and that they approach it in a balanced manner. The other item on the office side is, right, you need to be able to make decisions, and the industry, the day, everything moves too fast for you to not be confident in making even just some simple decisions. And that's the other thing I think we really spend some time really diving into when we're talking to people about joining our industry and joining our organization.
Yeah, that really hits home for me, because like I kind of pride myself in like being a fast moving person, like in the industry. But I made my word, I do a word of the year every year. My word is acceleration this year. And it's really just it's like I was leaving the office a little early yesterday at 4:00 to spend some time with my 2-year-old. So we do these little mini adventures. And so I had to leave right at 4. And so at 3:55, there were like 2 things that I needed to keep moving. And I was like, okay, Aaron, acceleration. And it's hard for me because I want those responses, because it was like somebody introing me into this association and then this other intro into a potential client. And so I wanted to like have the perfect answer, but it's like, no, you just like, you got to move. Because a week from now, that person is also in the transportation industry, and that's going to be so far behind, like they're not even going to be thinking about it, like, or on their radar. If I respond, it's like, okay, missed your window. And it's just such a fascinating industry from that standpoint. And this year, I think it's going to accelerate more, which is hard to believe, but there's going to be more technology rollout this year. Things might heat up, and or just complexity shifts with more local versus regional and OTR. Like there's just a big change there. And then AI. I know we hear it all the time, but I was speaking with one of my developers this last week. We were doing a performance review, and he was talking about how the average developer, because he works with like a lot of developers around the country, and he's like that now takes them a quarter of the amount of time to like get a project done on average. That was the way he estimated it. Wow. Just because you can ask AI to code things. Right. And so I honestly have just been thinking, oh, this is a buzzword. Like we're kind of making this too much of a thing. Yeah. But when he said that, he's like, I now have to be 4 times as effective because of just how things are changing. Yeah. And my whole job is going to completely change. And he gave an example. He's like, there was this tool that in the past took me a year to build. And then I redid it, and it took me a day. Like, I'm like, what in the world? He's like, yeah, just because all I have to know is the prompts on how to build it now. And then I just check the code. I was like, what in the world? I've never even heard of such a thing. Like, that's crazy how quickly.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, you could spend a lot of time talking about AI, and I think that's the other thing, right? I mean, our industry is certainly fast paced, but you need to be sound in your decisions, right? You have to make still good foundational decisions, but we need to embrace change and embrace technology and what in the world it might do, to our industry, and continue to do, for the better. So I think that's something that you can spend a lot of time thinking and talking about that one. So, and I think when you talk about pace and decision making, right, especially if you're involved in the day to day, it's just so important there, right? I mean, for strategic planning and long term, plans for your organization and strategy, right? Yeah, you need to spend some mind space there, right, and spend some time thinking through those big things. But our industry just demands day to day adaptability and ability to kind of make the next move, right?
And so that's one of the things you guys are testing on the front end is just, or looking for, is just, are they adaptable?
Yeah. We're finding it in a pretty, I believe, to be scientific way through our assessment, right? I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call it a test, but I guess you could label it that, but more of an assessment.
Assessment, yeah. Sorry, misspoke on that.
No.
The assessment on the onboarding.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things I want to run through, like really quick, let's say like 1 minute rapid fire rounds, because everybody wants me to ask these. Is like, are you noticing anything like in terms of marketing trends changing in terms of how you source drivers specifically? Like that could be like certain things working well or things you're looking at this year.
Yeah, I think, the top of the funnel, I guess, phrase it that way, but some of your key places, right? Your Indeeds of the world, right? They're still driving a big bulk of what's coming in, right? You still have to post on job boards. You still have to be engaged, and that's probably the biggest board, right? For almost any career path, right? But I think for us, some of the newer things that we're really starting to see come to fruition are just, some more focus and engagement, on social media. And I think we've been focused there for years and years, right? It's like, okay, but it's hard to track the returns. It seems like it takes longer to get the returns there. But I think, as we focus more and more there, I think we're just starting to see, a bit more click through, follow through, right? In some of those veins. And I think, I can't say it's one or the other. It's not just Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, right? It's kind of a compilation or a combination of those things. And I think strategy there has started to pay off a bit more. I think we're getting a little bit more follow through and recognition there, so that's helping to kind of build the longer term pipeline for our organization. Outside of that, I don't think there's been like this quick hit that we're seeing, just be a quick home run. But I just think, the energy and focus there, and then focusing on creativity in that space too, right? Like doing some fun things, doing some funny things, showing who you are in that space is huge. And I'm maybe not as good as that as our people that actually do that work. Thank goodness they're better than me. But yeah, I think that's been key to us. And that's when I, myself not being a social media junkie, like it's really not me, but thank goodness we have people here that know what the heck they're doing in that space.
Yeah, that's one thing like a goal for this year is to try to laugh more and like enjoy things. Cause like by default, I'm just very serious and like goals, mission. But a lot of people have just challenged me to like just have more fun with it. And I really like that creativity and having fun with it in your marketing and advertising like that.
Yeah.
That might be that little breakout success this year. What are you seeing like in terms of just, or what do you anticipate with the industry? I know you said you're like planning and set for growth, but not that any of us really knows, but like, what do you anticipate? What are you just kind of seeing in general or feeling in the market going into like, as we enter, we're entering February right now.
Yeah. So I think, you're seeing more capacity bleed off, but I think it still is really slow at times. And I think, that's the concerning part is that, there's a little bit of a worry around, hey, has enough come out that, and if things start to bounce back, are more going to come in really quickly again. But I think, the number of brokers that came into our industry over the last few years just was astronomical, right? You've seen a drop off on that side as well. So I think, paying attention to those couple things, like what is capacity doing? And then, what is the one-way market doing? Are things that we're paying attention to. Outside of that, just staying really close to the customer base, like what's going on in their world, right? I mean, and what's going on with the volumes of freight, right? What are the tariffs going to do? What are some of these big things that are in our world right now? Like, what are those impacts going to be? And trying to just really actively listen, with our customers too. So, but I wish I could say, hey, we're keen on this or keen on that. I think it's just a handful of things.
Yeah, and all that is just evolving very quickly. It's like if we even touch on with specificity the tariff situation currently, it'll be outdated in a month when this releases, because it's changing so fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good. Like, so basically, as a fleet, you're focused on your key clients, like what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're like, just really centered on just their pain points and where they see things going. So it's what you're seeing in the market is just very specific to you guys and you're dedicated for.
The focus of your customer base too, can kind of tell you where they think things are going, right? I mean, are they talking in short-term, medium-term, long-term ways, right? I mean, when there starts to be a little bit more medium and long-term focus, right? That means that things are starting to shift, right, a little bit. So I think that's something to key on too.
That's good. Yeah, one of my predictions in it is just everybody, like going back to what we talked about in the middle, just like a cautious optimism.
Yeah,
I think everybody's just going to go into it a little leaner, a little smarter, with a little more technology, just because things were so bloody from just with a lot of companies having to lay off a lot of people.
Yeah.
On the recruiting side, on the driver side, just letting attrition happen. Some things where, I think it's just going to be cautious optimism. And
and I think,
none of the aggressive stuff like we've seen in the past.
I agree. I think you're right. And you just got to balance that, right? We do need to be careful, around this recovery, and inevitably, the times the last few years probably didn't keep up with inflation, up until this year, right? So, there's a lot of cost factors too, and you just being disciplined, right, as you're looking to expand or grow is going to be really key, and it's what's best for our industry too, right? I mean, it doesn't help when we undercut each other to break even or take a loss, right? There's no point in that. So So I think, that's something that I think you're going to see a little bit more discipline as time goes on here. And hopefully that just carries over, right, even to the next time around, because our market cycles, right, kind of a perfect example of supply and demand traditionally.
Yeah. And coming out of COVID, I mean, we're still dealing with what we're dealing with today is just the collapse of everything during COVID, and then the run up that everyone thought was a new normal, and profitability was through the roof, and then long tail crash.
Right. Yeah. It was the highest and hottest, and now it's like the lowest and longest. It's like, man, so you're right. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I like the cautious optimism.
A year from now, we're in a much different spot in a really positive space, for all of our benefit.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keith, for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. I just think we added a ton of value to the industry. And so I really appreciate your time in the middle of your busy day jumping on for our audience.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. Our goal with the Hire Truckers podcast is to provide industry insights, marketing trends, and motivation to level up your recruiting game. If we added value, take a few seconds to share this with your network. Have a great week.